seeks to Thank you for that alert. Our organization seeks to create rural vibrancy by connecting people and the economy to the forested landscape. And we have three strategies to deliver on that objective. Strengthening rural communities, growing forest-based businesses, and deepening forest stewardship. We've been working closely with communities across the Northern Forest for more than 25 years, and supporting the outdoor recreation economy has long been a part of our strategy to help create rural vibrancy. A little over a year ago, the center partnered with the Northern Border Regional Commission to host the 2024 Outdoor Recreation Symposium. This was a two-day event that saw over 200 regional stakeholders in the world of outdoor recreation here in the Northern Forest come together to learn and share ideas for the future of outdoor recreation and explore how we can support this burgeoning sector of the economy. One of the ideas that was generated during the event was more ways to share examples and models of success in this sector. There was some talk about a story repository, and another idea that came up was this concept of a detailed guidebook for communities to help get projects done, possibly informed by case studies of successful community-driven outdoor recreation projects that municipalities, nonprofits, and volunteer groups could use to advance their own projects. So this summer, we are hosting a fellow from the UNH Sustainability Institute to help find and document these success stories, conducting in-depth case studies of successful outdoor recreation projects in the region. These may help inform the creation of a future guidebook for making projects happen. We're happy to say that our friends at the New Hampshire BEA are actually working on an outdoor recreation toolkit right now, and we're excited to see what that looks like. So later in our conversation here, Janel Lawton, Director of the state's Office of Outdoor Recreation Industry Development, will join us to share their plans and talk about potential collaboration with this project. So, without further ado, I'm excited to introduce you all today to Caleigh Mullins, a junior at UNH and our summer UNH Sustainability Institute Fellow. Caleigh will share her research on 9 different projects in this region, which is northern Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York, and give a few common keys to success from those projects. She'll be joined by a few of my center colleagues who were involved in bringing these projects to life, and later in the call, we'll have time for a question and answer session. Please use the Q&A function to ask questions as we go rather than the chat function. And I see some of you introducing yourself in the chat function now, and that's great. Please continue to do so. We're so glad to have you on this call, and I'm really pleased to introduce you all to Caleigh Mullins. Caleigh, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Joe, and thank you everyone for being here today. Like Joe mentioned, I'm Caleigh Mullins, a junior with UNH, spending the summer with the center as a sustainability fellow. And I just want to take this time to say it has been an amazing experience to learn more about the outdoor recreation sector and all of these inspiring stories, which I'm excited to share with you all today. All right, so as Joe mentioned, the core of this project that I've been working on is researching and developing case studies of successful recreation initiatives to share as inspiration and also just acknowledge their awesome work. After meeting with Northern Forest Center staff to learn more about some projects of note that they've heard of or been involved with, we narrowed down a list of probably over 50 recreation initiatives throughout the region down to 9. I also want to take this time to thank all of the Northern Forest Center staff who have taken time to meet with me over this project and share some valuable insights about these projects, which will later feed into a quick discussion with some colleagues about some projects of note that they've been involved with. So after meeting with stakeholders from each of these outdoor rec projects, the 9 case studies were created. This final report is overall a compilation of these case studies and successful stories, which each act as a unique example of how outdoor recreation can support community, health and wellness, economy, and stewardship in different types of communities. So going over a little bit about what's inside the report, an overview and background, just briefly explain the Northern Forest Center's positioning within the outdoor rec sector, and discusses some background for the project. Also highlighting potential uses of this resource, which include just, again, recognition of these amazing initiatives, hopefully inspiration for new ideas, and potential advocacy, using some of these stories to gain support for outdoor recreation, and then potentially planning and replication, using one of these models as a launching pad for new outdoor rec projects. Each case study includes details on the project's origin and catalyst, their mission and vision, some planning and implementation strategies, funding and partnerships that were used, and then impacts like social, economic, and environment. It also includes some challenges and lessons learned that others can take away from. Across all of the projects, key themes and common challenges were outlined to give insight into some of these deeper values that all of these projects had in common that ultimately helped them succeed. Lastly, a resources guide compiles some various existing toolkits, existing guides, financial resources, potential partnerships, and other really cool resources like Nature Groupie, which is actually a UNH extension that helps promote and support various outdoor volunteering needs across New England. All right. And I just want to highlight each of these case studies very briefly to just put a spotlight on their efforts. So after a very difficult selection process, the 9 case studies selected were in Maine, the Katahdin Gear Library, Western Maine Recovery Outings, and Bucksledge Community Forest. In New Hampshire, we have the Kowa Cycling Club and Mill City Park at Franklin Falls. In Vermont, there is Crag, Vermont, particularly their Bolton Dome acquisition, and also Scutney Ski Area. And then in New York, the E-Town Trail Center and Dewey Mountain Recreation Center. So getting right into it, Katahdin Gear Library in Millinocket, Maine. The Gear Library lends out outdoor gear to residents, just like books, with the presence of a municipal library card. They started alongside the Millinocket Memorial Library, but have since expanded to accept library cards from some surrounding areas as well. So residents get access to free gear for 24 hours with discounted rates thereafter. But visitors can also visit and rent gear at competitive rates. In the library, stands as an innovative model to reduce barriers to the outdoors and is actually growing. You can see some more gear libraries popping up, like Maine Gear Share. There's another one in Portland and one in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, I believe. But a really awesome model, especially in a community like many New England and rural areas are, transitioning from a mill-based economy to a more diverse and recreation-based one. The Gear Library supports recreation-based tourism, but it also really helps promote local vitality and encouraging local residents to explore their own backyards without outdoor rec being framed as this luxury experience. Western Maine Recovery Outings operates in the Western Maine region, so around Oxford, Norway area. This program is run through the Western Maine Addiction Recovery Initiative, and they bring together people and individuals in recovery and their supporters. By providing free outdoor recreation trips, they cover everything from gear, guides, transportation, even fishing license. They hosted a fishing trip covering everything. So the trips offer low pressure space for healing, connection, and overall just having a good time. By harnessing the healing power of nature and providing space for these organic conversations, but also allowing for comfortable silence, like if you are on a hiking trip or kayaking or snow tubing. These trips really promote getting people connected with the environment, but can also prove to be more beneficial than traditional approaches to recovery healing. Buck's Ledge Community Forest, based in Woodstock, Maine, is a really great example of conservation and recreation project. The Buck's Ledge land had been used and loved for a very long time by residents with landowner permission, but there was always that background threat that this access wasn't protected since it was privately owned. So after long-term town involvement with land and the community, when the opportunity to purchase this land arose and place a conservation easement, adoption was super quick. Uh, the land now provides critical ecological importance, houses rare species, critical habitats, old growth trees. They support traditional recreational uses like hiking and snowshoeing, and is really a heart of the community, even having some trails that connect directly to the local school. In New Hampshire, the Coas Cycling Club in Coas County area, so Gorham and Berlin, New Hampshire, is really a great story of just some good grassroots trail building. A couple who had moved into the town in the early 2000s noticed the lack of biking trails, but they saw a lot of potential in some undeveloped or underdeveloped trails at a local state park. So after receiving permission to revive some of these trails, they started to notice local use and got permission to build new trails, eventually slowly growing a local rider base, some strong volunteer energy, and transforming into the nonprofit that they are today. Now maintaining more than 25 miles of purpose-built single track, they host weekly group rides, and support youth initiatives like notably Pete's Bike, which was a program of the club to purchase a fleet of 12 mountain bikes to increase youth access, to get kids who may not have the opportunity otherwise on mountain bikes and out on these trails. Mill City Park at Franklin Falls is in Franklin, New Hampshire, is a story from a local champion individual, a whitewater enthusiast who saw examples of in-river whitewater parks in states like Colorado and wanted to bring this to New England. The town itself had actually been undergoing a really ambitious revitalization effort, hoping to utilize recreation as a driving factor. So this whitewater park aligned very well with their visioning. The park was implemented throughout the entire process with low impact design, permaculture principles. They placed conservation easement on previously deforested paper mill land, and they actively have plans for river remediation to not only limit their land impact, but actively reverse past impacts, with the goal to just really reconnect the community with the heart of the town, the Winnie River. And in Vermont, a Scottney ski area in West Windsor had long been home to pretty decent sized commercial ski areas, but due to increasingly poor snow seasons and kind of getting overshadowed by these bigger ski resorts in Vermont, like Stowe, Killington, um, the resort cycled through many bankruptcies and closures, closing one last time around 2010 after a really big liquidation event. This closure had significant economic impacts. Property values halved, local town shops really struggled, but it also had some really significant community impacts. The town itself just really didn't want to lose their ski town identity. So the community just came together and rallied to save and reopen the mountain, establishing a nonprofit to run the area through primarily volunteer efforts. Ascutney Outdoors was formed. Uh, they built a totally volunteer built rope tow, eventually put in a T-bar, put in a tubing park, rebuilt the lodge, and resurrected a local ski school program. They now act as a multi-season and multi-use rec hub, offering hiking and biking alongside snow sports. They host programming and events in off seasons. and have really grown to be an integral part of the community, even helping to revive a local general store, the Brownsville Butcher and Pantry, which now host events at the mountain and even help to cater events that use the Ascutney Outdoors Mountain as a venue. Crag, Vermont, is a nonprofit that works to restore rock climbing access and preserve rock climbing access across the entire state. One of their standout acquisitions or preservations of climbing access was their Bolton Dome project. Uh, they secured this around 2017. So Bolton Dome was a very popular place for rock climbing in Vermont around the 70s and 80s. But after landowner conflicts, they closed this cliff from public access around the 90s. And this closure, along with very similar closures all across the state, actually helped to formalize and catalyze the beginning of the Crag Vermont group. After this group formed, a local volunteer began consistently staying in touch with the Bolton Dome landowners, asking to reopen the area for climber access. Eventually, this paid off. However, roughly a decade later, landowners stated that they were going to sell the land, and they offered the Crag Vermont group to put in an offer before open market. Using an access fund loan, the land was purchased and placed under conservation easement to protect the land and climbing access. To this date, Bolton Dome is the Crags Group biggest acquisition, and it was at the time, may still be, the Access Fund's largest climbing conservation loan program loan, which is super cool. And then finally moving into New York, the E-Town Trail Center, based in Elizabethtown, New York, is a story of just a local champion individual who wanted to bring together an existing grassroots trail network. This individual, Jeffrey Allett, attended a Northern Forest Center symposium back in 2018, and he was inspired with the idea to create this community meeting place to connect existing trails. This would act as a warming hut, offer changing rooms, restrooms, or just overall meeting place to bring this network to life. At the symposium, he learned about a Northern Borders Regional Commission grant, and the center helped with the application, and the project was ultimately awarded the grant, which paid for all of the construction materials. And then maintaining the grassroots energy, like the trails were built, the warming hut, trail center, and pavilion were built almost entirely by volunteer efforts. And last, but certainly not least, in New York is Dewey Mountain Recreation Center, located in Saranac Lake, New York. And Dewey Mountain is a really great example of very long-standing community recreation. The ski area dates back all the way to the 30s and 40s, officially opening as what it is now in the 70s. The center serves as what long-term community rec can be. They have a unique management structure, being owned by the town and managed privately, with further support from an unaffiliated Dewey Mountain Friends group in partnership with a local nonprofit. Great. After walking through briefly each of the case studies, I want to take a step back and just highlight some of the key takeaways that have emerged across these projects. Again, probably very briefly for time purposes, but these are far from one-size-fits-all solutions or steps, but rather patterns, strategies, conditions, or kind of these deeper values that all projects have had in common that ultimately kind of helped their success. So one of the consistent themes was the importance of reducing barriers to access. This showed up in almost every project, like the Western Maine Recovery Outings, which is the basis of their initiative. By being a program that people actively want to see and need, They're continuously seeing this increase in user base and even getting individuals who drive an hour and a half to participate. Overall, people want to get outdoors and get involved in outdoor recreation, but there's a lot of barriers. So if they can't, they can't. When projects break down these barriers, they're increasing their user base and getting more project support. Finding diverse funding and partnerships is more of a strategy that seems self-explanatory, but can often get overlooked. Finding diverse funding streams and partnerships is one of the main keys to success across every initiative that I've looked at. No project did the work alone, and no one needed to. There was always an outside partnership, town, nonprofit, volunteers who are willing to help because they wanted to see the project and use it for benefit. One thing that really stood out was when I was talking with the owner of the Adirondack Lakes and Trails Outfitter, which is the business that currently manages Dewey Mountain, had said, you don't need to over-engineer things. You just need to find a few willing partners offering 10% rather than trying to find one willing to give 100. And I think this just really reinforces the idea that people are always willing to help. And even if it's just 10%, it can add up super quickly. And this effort doesn't go to waste. Building trust is more about just ensuring the maintenance and consistent and transparent communication with all of your stakeholders in the project. For example, Buck's Ledge leaders had been building trust with the community for over a decade before they acquired the land, being involved and listening to community needs. For example, groups like hunters and snowmobilers often lose access when land changes hands, but Buck's Ledge made sure to maintain access and actively plan for it to ensure safety, really showing that like when people feel like their voices are heard, they're more likely to get involved and stay involved, and it can really help community adoption of the project. Social infrastructure kind of goes to say that outdoor infrastructure isn't always just the trails or signs, but the people, spaces, and routines that make it up. Projects that succeeded often leaned on the social infrastructure, like libraries, rec programming, youth groups, are really vital third spaces. This helps build community connections and really helps to promote this local vitality alongside tourism. And then youth engagement, many projects actively prioritize youth engagement as users, but also as emerging leaders. For example, actively seeking out and working with local schools to promote volunteering opportunities as a part of class curriculum can really help get kids involved and feel the benefits of outdoor rec, but it also helps build a future volunteer base and maintain efforts of the project. And then also coupling recreation with conservation. Each project made sure to come into their project with this ethic of care for the land. And like those with trails, highlighting responsible use of trails, such as mountain biking, putting up and following the Ride with Gratitude campaign, really reinforcing this code of caring for the land to ensure future use. And then again, outdoor recreation can be a really strong tool for revitalization and increasing vitality in rural towns. And positioning outdoor rec projects along with broader revitalization, such as how Mill City Park did in Franklin, it can really increase the chances of your successful pitch, increase the success of town partnerships, and really contribute to long-term buy-in of the project. Finally, utilizing existing assets. Many projects looked at what already existed, whether it be existing trail networks, building foundation, nonprofit, or volunteer base. Using existing, like a community base, or especially using existing trails, can help really stretch your resources, accelerate implementation, and importantly, really limit this new land impact. All right. And then quickly going through these challenges just to note them. Some challenges that came up were staffing capacity. Most projects are volunteer run. Permitting and bureaucracy. A lot of projects face really considerate permitting requirements. And then also logistical constraints, such as weather delays. And the main takeaway from this across projects was just implementing these projects with adaptability and being able to adapt to any changes or challenges that are thrown at the group. Great. And then thank you everyone for listening to the brief overview. Had to be super quick for time purposes, but I hope that everybody enjoyed learning a little bit more about these projects as much as I have. And with that, I will pass it back to Joe to continue the conversation.
Caleigh, thanks so much for sharing that information on your case studies. That was awesome. And yeah, I would share and echo that I wish we had more time to do a super deep dive into all of these projects because there really is some pretty amazing work that's happened behind the scenes. One of the things that I think was the key to this project is highlighting what can happen when communities work together and have a common vision. So it's not just getting these projects done, it's also sustaining them, which I think ties into that whole reason we got you, Caleigh, with the UNH Sustainability Institute. And on that note, could you just briefly talk about the Sustainability Institute? I realize that we didn't chat about that in our introduction.
Yeah, of course. So the UNH Sustainability Institute is just a department at the University of New Hampshire, really helping to promote sustainability of the university and also surrounding areas. So the Summer Fellowships is a program through the Sustainability Institute where they place both UNH and non-UNH undergraduates and post-baccalaureates with partners such as municipalities, education partners, nonprofits, businesses. And each summer, a fellow takes on a transformative sustainability project from all sorts of things. I've heard projects about like carbon accounting and doing carbon footprints for some cities to this project, working with a nonprofit to promote outdoor recreation. And it's a really great program just to both leverage sustainability initiatives and get some more sustainable projects out in the community.
Yeah, I would echo that. I had the distinct pleasure of being Caleigh's mentor this summer, and had a pretty impressive tour of the UNH campus. Saw a lot of the initiatives that they do on campus, whether that's physical plants, the way they heat and cool the facilities, and the way they really take a pretty holistic view of sustainability. Met some of Caleigh's peers in the program, and that was quite impressed with what I saw there. Earlier on in the presentation, Caleigh mentioned that she narrowed about 50 project ideas down to 9, and that is not an easy thing to do. Jackie Dagger, thank you for your question in the comments, sort of how were projects chosen. So we had a few sort of, I guess, criteria or things we were looking for. One was geographic disbursement throughout the Northern Forest, which for the most part are these projects kind of fell in the Northern Forest range. Ascutney is a little bit south. Mill City is a little bit south of our typical um, kind of service area at the center. However, we thought the projects were really interesting with the type of projects they were. So we looked again at geographic disbursement. We looked at project type disbursement. We looked for projects that really had a strong community vibe, so that weren't necessarily 100% kind of tourist focused. We looked for projects that involved some kind of public process. We wanted some projects that showed evidence of nonprofits and municipalities using outside capacity to help support their initiatives, and also a mix of projects that the Northern Forest Center has and hasn't necessarily been a part of. So on that note, I'm really happy to introduce you to some of my center colleagues who've each played some part in a few of these projects. So I'm joined today by Maura Adams, our Director of Community Investment, Leslie Carrison, our Adirondack Program Director, Amy Scott, our Maine-based Program Manager, Julie Renaud Evans, a Program Director based in Northern New Hampshire, and Mike Morin, our Vermont and New Hampshire Program Director. Thank you all for joining this talk. And I guess before we kind of dive in, maybe in order of introduction, starting with you, Maura, can you just share a little bit about your involvement with your given project?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And I will say we would have really liked to have people representing folks from the case studies.
Maura, we're getting some feedback on your audio. Sorry.
I do not know what that would be from. You're still getting it?
Yep. Can I skip ahead to maybe we'll go west to east? We'll give you 2 states to catch up. Leslie, you want to share with us your stories?
Sure. Leslie Carrison, I'm the Adirondack Program Director, and the 2 projects featured in New York are not ones that I have had really a front row seat at building, but have been sort of fans, and I've been a fan and a supporter of those projects. In the case of Dewey Mountain, I'm a member of the community and have just sort of watched and used the facility, but watched its evolution over time, in particular the lodge construction that happened about 8 or 10 years ago now, that really shaped that facility and brought it to the next level. And in the case of the Elizabethtown Trail Center, again, as somebody who has watched that, the center has played a role in supporting that project, but not really a front seat row, at least not myself personally. So I'm a fan and a booster and a watcher more than I am an active player.
Thank you so much. Mike, can you share with us a little bit about the Bolton Dome project and your experience in climbing access conservation?
Sure thing, Joe. Thanks. Yeah, Mike Morin, Vermont, New Hampshire Program Director for the center. Yeah, the Bolton Dome project. I was actually a part of that work back in 2017. From a previous job, and I was the Northeast Regional Director for the Access Fund. So had the privilege of meeting with the landowners, the first meeting around their kitchen table to talk about potentially acquiring the property, and then worked as part of a team with the Access Fund to support Crag, Vermont as they pursued acquisition of the land, and helped administer the loan and work on the conservation easement for the property, and then ultimately supported the final fundraising efforts to close on that project. So yeah, that was my involvement.
And just to add some context, Mike, can you share a little bit about like what made that Bolton project particularly important for like the greater Burlington area for those that may not be familiar with the geography?
Sure, yeah. Bolton Dome sits in I think Richmond, Vermont, or perhaps Bolton. It's kind of right on the line there, but really amazing climbing resource that, as Caleigh mentioned, had been closed for at that point a couple decades, and it really has become one of the most popular climbing areas in Vermont, and it's heavily visited, and has really opened up a lot of climbing opportunities for climbers in the Burlington area and across the state, and sees visitation from outside the state on a regular basis. It features climbing from, if you're familiar with climbing difficulties, ratings from 5.2 to 5.13, everything from single pitch to multi-pitch. So really an amazing resource with a very short approach. You can park and walk up to the cliff within 5 to 10 minutes.
That's awesome. Thank you. Maura, you want to try again?
How's that?
Much better.
Okay, thank you. Well, what I was starting to say was we would have loved to have people representing the case studies who are actually like from the community here, but it is mid-August and we had a very hard time getting folks. So I hope, Voices of Center staff we supported some of these are helpful too. The project here that I've been most directly involved in was with Coas Cycling Club. They were one of the founding members of our Bike Borderlands collaborative, which provides a lot of capacity and organizational development support for a group of mountain bike groups. So they've been part of Borderlands, which Joe and I have coordinated for a number of years now. I wrote their first strategic plan back 5 or 6 years ago that they've actually been following, which is awesome. We've given them a lot of grants through Borderlands, and I've written some grants on their behalf. So I've been pretty close to that group and their really awesome work in Gorham.
Awesome. Thank you, Maura. And Julie, would you like to share with us a little bit more about Buck's Ledge? And Amy, I know you're involved there as well, so feel free to both share your experiences on that awesome community asset.
Thanks, Joe. As Caleigh mentioned, the Buck's Ledge Community Forest was essentially a conservation project. It's a beloved piece of land, literally a ledge overlooking North Pond in Woodstock, Maine. And people have been hiking that for centuries, probably. And they'd been trying to acquire that land for a long time. So finally, in 2021, when the landowner finally said, yes, we're serious, we will sell to you, the center, along with partner Mahoosic Land Trust, quickly came together with the town, specifically the Woodstock Conservation Commission, to manage this conservation acquisition with recreation as a high priority. And so we essentially took the town through a pretty intensive planning process. In a conservation project, many of you probably know, there's a lot of acquisition details to take care of. And besides that, the center usually takes the town through a planning process, so a public planning process of monthly meetings. And that planning process entails bringing people together to, first of all, learn about the property. So we brought in experts about the ecologist who did the ecological assessment, the forester who did the forestry work. We brought in experts on peregrine falcons. We brought in Mike Morin and others to teach us about rock climbing on Buck's Ledge, etc. So we learned together. And then we helped the town set priorities. How do you want to see this land managed? How do you see this land used? How do you see this land protected? And the end deliverable at the end of that process is a literal plan on how we're going to steward land, how we're going to use the land. And as I said, beyond the conservation values that Caleigh mentioned in terms of being close to the pond, having some old growth forests, having these really cool natural communities of plants at the bases of these ledges, etc. Some real inherent conservation values there. We also had the recreation values of the trails and the rock climbing. And I have to say, Buck's Ledge was one of my most favorite community forest projects, literally because the passion of the townspeople was palpable. I had a volunteer committee that met weekly for over a year, and they just really wanted this to happen so badly. And I know that passion is reflected in many of these other projects as well, but for me, that's a highlight of this project.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. Amy, do you have anything else you'd like to add about Buck's Ledge?
Sure. So I really wasn't involved in terms of the Northern Forest Center, but I live just a few miles from here, and I'm also from Buck's Ledge, and I'm also super familiar with most of the players, most of the organizations, most of the. I was involved in the first round of trying to acquire the property back in 2008. And I take advantage of Buck's Ledge all the time because it's so close to my house. And a couple things I will add, which are that it is a remarkable example of a lot of community members and partners coming together, and they're still at it in a big way. Like it's not stopping. It's amazing. They just finished an accessible trail that is absolutely gorgeous and beautiful, and pretty substantial. So and they're just extremely thoughtful about how to do that, how to make the parts of the property that have views available to people who can't necessarily walk or who might be in a wheelchair, or who are pushing strollers. There's a lot of thought went into that. And just so many neat collaborations with art and with education. And then the last thing I'll say is that I just read a comment on the Facebook page that an ecologist had done a bat study and very recently, and had two microphones and identified 6 of the 8 species that are in Maine on that property, which is amazing. And one of them is extremely rare, and one of them is on both the state and federal endangered species list. So that is amazing. So kind of the point the commenter was making is that recreation and conserving ecological values can happen at the same time, which is amazing, and a result of Julie's amazing work. Just getting the group to develop a remarkable plan, a plan that can really be implemented for sustaining all of those uses and values. But what I know a lot more about is the Western Maine recovery outing. So I facilitate the Maine West initiative here in Western Maine, and out of that, without explaining what that is all about, out of that came a clear need in the community from some of our partners in the public health world, that several of the groups that work with people in recovery were wanting to connect, get people outside somehow. So it was just this idea, a lot of just, that this is something that people had recognized was important to, for some people personally, just on an individual level. And they really wanted to try, well, what if we made this part of our programming in our recovery center program, basically. And through a lot of great collaboration and a lot of thought and a lot of connection to community and a lot of trial and error, this program came together and has been really, really neat to see how it's unfolded and the impact it's been having on people in that community, seeing and hearing the stories of what those outings have meant to both people in recovery as well as their families and supporters, have been really significant. And it's been really special to understand how activating a lot of these recreation assets in our region that we have, and making them available to more people in a way that's supported. Just the impact that can really have on people's lives. It's also a really great coming together, similar to Buck's Ledge, in that it's a really great coming together of a lot of different partners to make that happen. Sort of one central partner, but then businesses, nonprofits, individuals, volunteers, and a lot of different creative funding sources kind of all coming together to make it happen. It's been very successful and impacted a lot of people.
Yeah, I would echo that, Amy. Thank you for sharing. We had Kari on a previous webinar that was, I believe, titled Outdoors for All. And she really talked with a lot of passion about how important these outings are to folks, and just the feeling of security that they have, knowing that they're in the woods and outside with folks that are going through similar life circumstances. And it's just like there's almost an unspoken sense of ease that comes with that I thought was really powerful. So I find that story particularly inspiring. Thank you all for sharing. And so again, this was just a snippet of the amazing work that's happening every day here in the Northern Forest. I think I can speak for all of us at the center that we're really proud and grateful to do the work that we do that's made possible by our supporters, helping to just advance rural vibrancy and making this a place that people want to stay, that people want to move to, and that people want to feel a part of. Again, this project, the real key was just highlighting some great stories. And the idea was that some of these takeaways may, help inform some kind of future guidebook or you know, assistance for communities that are looking to do similar projects. And we're going to, again, talk with Janel Lawton here shortly with the BEA. But before we do that, some of the takeaways that Caleigh mentioned, things like building trust, like finding a dedicated group of volunteers. Um, can can some of you talk about which of those stand out to you in the projects that you've been involved in, and whether they're projects that are in this group of case studies or just in general in your work? Do you have advice to communities that are looking to advance outdoor recreation? Just real things that anything that pops to mind.
Joe, I can jump in. Just, from the perspective of Bolton Dome, really the success of that project came down to having an organized group of volunteers that had well-established nonprofit organization. The Access Fund, as a national nonprofit, our work really relied on, or the work still relies on, collaborating with local grassroots volunteers to get projects done. The relationships that were built by the local volunteer, Dr. Richard Katzman, continuing to knock on the door of the landowner over the whatever 20, 30 years that property was closed, and making sure that relationship was sustained with the landowner really is what opened the door ultimately to that project happening, and then having the organization in place to be a landowner and take on fundraising, and having those community connections to get the work done really was what made it a success. So being organized, I would say, is a key takeaway that I would encourage folks to pursue.
I'll add that we've talked a little bit about the importance of partners, and we've hinted at, although I don't think we've used the word, a champion. Like who is the volunteer lead that's really doing this? But really, what I think sort of predates that is the need for a vision and the willingness to think long term. And then as the volunteers come together, as the champion shows up, as the partners come together, you have this shared long-term vision. And that will get you there. That will get you there.
Yeah, I think keeping in the theme of this, Julie, I like that idea of long term. Instead of just focusing on getting the project done, again, sustainability. Like how do we keep this asset for future generations is really a part that I think sometimes can get overlooked, or not fully thought through. Things like organizational continuity. Like who's gonna take the lead when somebody inevitably moves on in their life to some other project. So great. And any other quick feedback before we move on? Maura?
Yeah, just quickly. I have been struck, especially in this with the work of the Coa Cycling Club, by the trust building elements and how at every step of the way they have done such a good job of talking to the state park and making sure it was cool with the state park to go and start working on the trails there. Working really closely with the landowners where they've built trails on, and making sure they have permission and things signed and buttoned up, and that the landowner feels good about who they are and what they're doing. Developing a good relationship with the town, so the town is on board, so that the town would cooperate with them on running a youth program, and really establishing good, solid working relationships with all of these entities and kind of doing things right. And I've, I just have seen that work so well for them as they try to build what they're doing in town.
One thing I can jump in with, which is I think maybe just echoing points that Mike and Julie already alluded to, is that, partnerships are difficult to build and sustain, but they really require trust elements that Maura just talked about, and they really require clarity as to what everybody's bringing to the table. And without that clarity, a partnership is just a mess. And so, like, for example, in the case of Dewey Mountain, Caleigh rattled off a long list of entities. The municipality brings something, the Friends group brings something, the business that manages the facility brings a ton, and they need to be clear on what their lanes are in order to be successful. And they also need good communication amongst them, and that was alluded to in Caleigh's slides about trust. But it is so critical because you know, a partnership doesn't work without that clarity and that trust.
Can I add on to that, Joe? In our community force projects, where we often have usually 3 partners, a couple of organizations plus the town, and we usually have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding that simply lays out the roles and responsibilities of each partner. And we do that right at the beginning of the project. So we know we have this shared goal, we have deadlines, etc. Who's responsible for what? And that's a really helpful tool for us. It's usually 3 or 4 pages, and it's useful to go back and say, who needs to be catching up, or who's way ahead, or who needs help with what, right? So a clarification document for sure is MOU is helpful.
I can just jump in, Joe, if that's okay.
Absolutely,
With
please.
one more point. I know, and Caleigh was highlighting the themes, and she mentioned the reducing barriers, and the Western Maine recovery outings were certainly one example, not the only example for sure, but one example of that. And I think just to go a little deeper on that, the people who were organizing these outings and trying them out the first year as a pilot program were very intentionally responsive to the people they were trying to serve or intending to serve, and that being had openness to, you know, not thinking that you've got it all right at the beginning, kind of having that openness to listen and change gears as you go for a better outcome. It was really important. And, you know, to understand and listen for, well, what things were really critical and made a difference for people, and, you know, what could have been better. So there's been, in every one of those outings, there's a tremendous amount of thought that goes into what is the person showing up for this outing experiencing? How are they invited? You know, what do they know that they are going to be offered when they get there? What do they need to make sure they provide themselves? And just kind of really a lot going into setting the stage and creating space that's you know, you can't trust has to come from the experience, right, of meeting people, but you can at least set the stage for making people feel comfortable showing up if it's maybe their first time coming, and also having that clarity in this case, and this I know is true for some other kinds of outings that are offered, you know, in the community as free or low barrier experiences, just being right up front about what is available, so that there's not that onus on the person to say, well, you know, I'm not gonna be able to come because I don't have shoes or whatever, I don't have a backpack, or just being really clear about what's going to be available has been really critical to keep people comfortable when they show up. And the one other thing I'll say about just kind of the thought into the structure and the planning for these. And again, this can apply in other spaces, but in particular for the recovery outings. And Joe alluded to this earlier too, but they've been very intentional about not over programming it. So a lot of thought goes into it in order to have space that is not over programmed, so that people can just sort of be when they're in this space and not have that pressure of, oh, I'm going to have to talk to people, or I'm going to have to share this, or I'm going to have to do that. Like it is really an open space, and people can connect and talk and about whatever they want or not. And that's very different than a lot of other recovery programs, but it's also something to think about in lots of other audiences that some of these programs are trying to reach.
I appreciate, thank you for that context, Amy. And I'll share, when I sat in the interview with Caleigh, Kari from the center, she shared that there's a lot of contact that happens. So, she said people can have good days, people can have bad days, people can have good weeks, people can have bad weeks. And, you're having a good week and you see this event that's 3 months from now and you register for it. Well, you need to have she shared that there's a lot of follow-up that happens, like, hey, just checking in. Do you need anything? Do you need a ride? Do you need a backpack? Do you need a sleeping bag? Like, really, cool. We're really looking forward to seeing you. And then there's like multiple follow-ups just to like build that trust prior to the event. And also just to kind of check in, like, but I think this is a good practice. Like, one of the takeaways I had for this, in general, as an outdoor rec practitioner, following up with participants is a really good way to make sure you have a high attendance rate for your event. And we're looking forward to seeing you. How are you doing? Let us know if you need anything. Like, you're building, every time you do that outreach, you're building a relationship with your clientele and whatever you're doing for outdoor recreation. So that was really powerful to me, and I give them a lot of credit to that. Any other key takeaways before we transition to the next part of our conversation here? Okay, I think that was a long enough awkward pause, and we'll move on. So I want to encourage you all, in the meantime, to please use the question and answer box. If there's things that have come up, we'll circle back to those shortly. I did mention earlier that New Hampshire is working on an exciting project that may incorporate some of Caleigh's work, particularly on the New Hampshire projects. But more specifically, the state of New Hampshire, through the Office of Outdoor Recreation and Industry Development, aka ORID, and the Division of Planning and Community Development, is partnering with CRO Planning and Design to create an easy-to-use outdoor recreation planning toolkit. The resource will support municipalities, nonprofits, and local stakeholders in planning, developing, and managing outdoor recreation opportunities that enhance well-being, attract tourism, and contribute to economic growth across the Granite State. I'm pleased to introduce you all to Janel Lawton, Director of ORID, to tell you more. And before I do that, really quickly, I just want to share, again, some of these ideas came out of our Outdoor Recreation Symposium we hosted last year at the Mount Washington Hotel. I alluded to that earlier. It was a 2-day event. We had a lot of folks help plan for that for over 18 months, and Janel was a part of that planning team, as was Jackie Dagger, who had a question in earlier in the chat, and I'm sure some other folks on the call that I can't see right now. But it was an event that we're really proud of. A lot of great stuff came from it, and again, Janel, I'm excited to see you again and to hear briefly what's going on over in New Hampshire. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Hi, everyone. I just want to take a moment to congratulate Caleigh and the UNH team and Joe and the Northern Forest team. The work you've done on these case studies is really impressive. And I think you've really captured some great example of what's happening on the ground in our communities. So listening to this today brought me back to the conversations of that 2024 Northern Forest Outdoor Rec Symposium that Joe just mentioned. And that event, for those of you who weren't able to be there, it was a real catalyst, a catalyst for a lot of work, a catalyst that sparked deeper collaborations, new partnerships, and the development of programs across the region, including several right here in Hampshire. So there were a few key takeaways from that symposium, but one of the big ones that came out of it was the importance of narrative, brand, and values. And so the idea around that was that we need to own and tell our own stories. And that message, I think, really resonated with many of us. And I think Caleigh's work is doing a great, it's a strong example of that in action. So I think it's really important that we continue to highlight these case studies and these stories that have been shared with us today, because they not only inform, but they really inspire people to go out and be that catalyst in their community. So I'm excited to share with you all today that New Hampshire is going to be incorporating the case studies that Caleigh presented into an upcoming initiative called Rec Ready New Hampshire, Rec Ready NH. And that'll be launching this fall. And so that project blends two major themes that came out of the 2024 symposium: the narrative and the storytelling, and the outdoor recreation infrastructure needs. So as Joe mentioned, Rec Ready New Hampshire is being developed through my office and with the Division of Planning and Community Development, in collaboration with CRO Planning and Design out of Burlington. And this toolkit is being designed to help municipalities and nonprofits and local leaders create outdoor recreation projects and assets that enhance the quality of life, that will drive tourism, and that will support economic development across the Granite State. So there will be 6 modules filled with tools that can be used in sequence or kind of a la carte. But those 6 modules will include 1, mapping inventory and existing conditions, 2, public and stakeholder engagement, 3, natural resources, education and interpretation, 4, recreation plan and document development, 5, project implementation and construction, and 6, economic impact and community development. So again, these modules are being designed so if you have, for example, a champion in your community who is new to this space, they can come in and start at the beginning and go right through the process, and it'll guide them through that process. Or you might have someone who has a specialty in this area, a planner for your municipality who's just looking for some additional resources. It's going to be broken down really clearly so they can come in and jump into this resource, grab the tools they need, and roll. So yeah, as I mentioned, that'll be releasing in late September, early October. So be on the watch for that. And a big thank you again to the Northern Forest Center and UNH for providing these case studies. And New Hampshire is really always grateful for your partnership and these great collaborations.
Thank you so much, Janelle. That sounds very exciting. I have a burning question, and it's been shared in the comments. Do you think the state of New Hampshire would be willing to share this resource with some of their friendly neighboring states?
Oh yeah, it's going to be a public resource. Absolutely, 100%. So we're developing a website, and I can talk a little bit more about that too. I didn't want to steal too much of the time, but each one of it's going to be hosted on our website, and we are going to have some webinars and be able to get out there and share this information through different channels. But online, you'll have full access to all the modules and all the resources in the modules.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. So folks, if we want to bring Caleigh back on the screen or the whole panel, I'm going to give you some guiding questions to think about here. So knowing that many of you on this call are representing various different agencies, municipalities, maybe just fans of the center work. Again, thank you all for being here. From what you've heard so far, if you were looking to advance some outdoor recreation projects in your community or for your nonprofit or for whatever it may be, um, and there was some kind of guidebook or online tool available, are there things in particular that you're looking for assistance with? You know, whether maybe that's grant writing or maybe it's conducting some kind of environmental assessment. Are there themes that stood out to you that Caleigh drew out or that our center team talked about that seem interesting to you? Do you think that there is a need for more case studies and more storytelling all throughout the region? Again, we had 50 in a matter of probably 48 hours just from an email, like an internal email to staff and Caleigh checking in with folks at the center, like, hey, what do you think is a really cool project from your community? You're like, oh my God, I want to tell you about this and that and this and that. So there's a lot of pride here in the Northern Forest. A lot of, again, really awesome organizations doing really cool work, and we want to tell those stories. So are there stories that, or types of projects that you're interested in learning about? You know, we tried to do something with rock climbing, we did skiing, we did Nordic, we've done mountain biking, whitewater, rock climbing, land conservation. Are there other projects that need research? And I'm just going to keep talking, and I hope that I start seeing
Are
some
you
questions
are
come
you
in
looking
the
for?
Q&A.
So yes, I wanted to clarify. These are questions for the audience, and
These
you
are
want them
questions
to
for the
put.
audience.
You
Yeah.
want people to put their answers in the chat, correct?
Yes, please. Yep. Or in the Q&A
Just
if you have.
clarifying things.
Yes, thank you.
And I'll say that it is a little weird to do kind of a conversation or Q&A like this in the webinar format where we can't see people, but we had issues with Zoom and meeting size and technical things, so had to make this a webinar after all, but we really are interested in hearing what folks have to say, what they'd be looking for in a guidebook, what other kinds of case studies they'd recommend, etc. So please do share your thoughts and questions.
Joe, if it's okay, I just want to, while people might be thinking about putting something in the chat, I just wanted to jump in to say, and maybe to kind of ask, as I'm curious also about, this might be a question for you, Caleigh, but a little bit about the reverse of that. Like, what are there helpful stories with projects that, or programs that just didn't work out, or had, fell apart or didn't come together the way they hoped it would, and kind of the why behind that. It's almost, I just think that learning from not just the success stories, but the bumps in the roads can be just as helpful. So I don't know if you came across that or if you learned about those in the course of getting to the success, or anything like that.
I can jump in really quickly. I know that every project definitely has had some bumps in the road. I think that that's inevitable among any type of initiative like this. But something that does come to mind is when I was learning about Mill City Park at Franklin Falls. I went to go visit the park. I'm actually local to surrounding areas, so I've known about Franklin, heard about what's going on in there, like pretty much my entire life. And one really big struggle that they've actually pretty recently overcome, but still face some struggles with, is this idea of just like negative pushback. A lot of rural communities, I'm sure as people have experienced before, aren't always the most accepting to change. And this idea of kind of building a big park and trying to increase visitors can kind of be daunting. In a way that the park has really counteracted this, or not counteract it, but they accept these pushbacks. They really listen to them. The nonprofit is very active in the community. Their board members and some staff, They have many partners within the community, and they actively host like listening events. They post all of their meeting notes publicly. They go to door to some of these households if they have questions. They really listen. They answer to the best of their ability, and they prioritize the community, hosting community events. They promote like free meals with the local church at the park. They have like youth programming. They have like Winnie River Days is a really big festival, but they also do like local school walks. And just this idea to really like not be afraid to acknowledge this pushback, but accept it and listen and really try to meet their needs and meet them where they're at.
So a few questions have come into the chat. And so one is, how does this group view active land management, aka harvesting timber, in conjunction with outdoor recreation? And I would say, as the Northern Forest Center, we believe that the Northern Forest itself is essential to the quality of life of both humans and the natural surroundings here in the region. That outdoor recreation, and I think this report, some of these case studies have proven it, that outdoor recreation and timber management can coexist quite well, frankly. When you look at the alternative of, say, strip mall development, once you have forest perforation, it's much more challenging to, put things like trails and town forests together. So having an incentive for the forest to remain a forest, and balancing that with the needs for economic development, recreational development is very important, and something that the center works really hard with communities throughout the region. We've fallen in an interesting place at the center, where we support the forest economy, we support outdoor recreation, and we support community development. And I'm happy to turn over to my colleagues to share some of their thoughts on that. But in a nutshell, I think it's safe to say that we firmly believe that outdoor recreation and forest management can coexist quite well.
Joe, I can, if you don't mind, add to what you're saying there. I think a big piece of that is also communications. And I know with a local group I'm involved with, where we have a trail network that goes over about 40 different landowners, right? And all of them have different goals and priorities with their land, but the communications with these folks, and when they come in and say, we have a forestry plan and this is what we need to be doing on the land, to really have a conversation with them and see how you can work to support their initiative, as well as preserving the outdoor recreation aspects of that land. So maybe work with them to reroute a trail, or in one case, we actually got a pretty sweet parking lot out of where they were logging. They created the logging space, and after that, they came in, cleaned it up, and we got a new parking lot to access our trails. So collaboration and communication, I think, is really beneficial when you're supporting multiple different initiatives, and as well when you're working with different partners, multiple towns, different entities and agencies.
Thanks, Janel. Yeah, I would add to that. The center team actually, we put together a survey for trail managers throughout the region this winter, that kind of looked into their perceptions on active timber management, and how that's been, one, kind of perceived by users of the trails, also inquiring, would they like some assistance in how to talk about what folks are seeing, like if they see a recent cut, or they see a previous cut, sort of why things are happening. Yeah, so some of the really quick feedback we had here, 91% of the people that we surveyed reported having communications with the landowner prior to timber management, which is awesome. 46% of the trail managers that we mentioned said they needed to close just a part of their trail network during timber management. And they were able to say, like, this is why we're closing this, and we're going to reopen it. And the trail will still be a trail. It may look different, but in time, these trees will grow back. So yeah, this is something that we're working very closely on. This is still in development, but the center team is looking to develop materials to share with trail managers through the region. So when folks see active timber management, they can have a better understanding of the why, which I think is great. And hopefully that creates more understanding that, again, these two things can coexist. A lot of times, when folks are out mountain biking on what they lovingly refer to as double track, there can be a disconnect that those trails were actually to access, a timber harvesting operation or forest management. So yeah, let's look at some of the other questions here. Hope that answers your question. Somebody mentioned loves the storytelling, especially as a volunteer who's new to the realm, really excited about Mill City Park. Curious to learn more about projects specifically dealing with brownfield revitalization. Off the top of my head, I can't think of some that deal with that, but I think that's a great focus for perhaps future case studies. Janelle, it sounds like you've got a project in mind.
Yeah, actually, Claremont, New Hampshire, they started out with a Brownsfield revitalization project, and that was successful as the first step, and they've been progressing over the years. And again, this is the long-term play, right? So they have used the success of that to build on future grants and projects that they've been able to receive. Which has been really fantastic. And now they're really able to dial into the outdoor rec and building their outdoor rec infrastructure and economy to support. So yeah, Claremont's a great example of that.
Awesome. Any others come to mind? Or other questions? Feel free to chime in.
Joe, I'd like to make a suggestion for a future potential guidebook, which is something we haven't really talked about, which is feasibility work that goes into these projects. And for some of us, it's often second nature, so we don't spell it out. But for someone with an idea, it's probably worth really clarifying what are those potential steps. We've talked about relationship building, we've talked about partners, but there's also some land assessments that might need to be done. There's also some assessments of, if we build it, will they really come? So those steps of feasibility would be an important piece to put in any sort of resource guide that was created.
Thank you, Julie.
Joe, I wanted to go back to Amy's note about challenges. I think it's important to note that, we talk about these successful projects, but more often than not, whether you're talking about a conservation project, working with a landowner to get an access agreement for recreational access, usually it's very common for those initial overtures to not be successful. And so I think it's important to, remind everybody to exercise, persistent patience, and not get frustrated, and recognize that in all these successes was a lot of kind of going back to the drawing board, maintaining relationships, being patient for the right time to act, and really it is about timing and relationship building. So if you don't succeed the first time, be patient, and inevitably, or usually, you'll find success in the long term. So I think that's an important takeaway from doing this work for a very long time.
I just wanted to jump into one of the comments in the chat, which is somebody wanting to see more stories of regional planning across multiple towns. And I know there's a couple people on, or we're on anyway, from the High Peaks Initiative in Maine, which is striving to do just that. And so when we move forward on whatever this toolkit or guide might look like, that's something to think about. They're kind of in the middle of it right now. It is the only example that I know right off the top of my head that's happening. But it is an interesting question, because when you get multiple towns, multiple entities, multiple landowners, multiple access points, the state agencies, it gets complicated quickly. But there are a lot of there are a lot of advantages to working. There can be a lot of advantages and efficiencies, and a lot more collaboration that can happen when you look at a space from a regional perspective. And I think it goes without saying. There is regional management when there's a single landowner. I'm thinking of the White Mountains, or something like that, where there might be a large area, but it has a common thread in terms of ownership. But those examples of being across a lot of different spaces, it'd be interesting. Yeah, be interesting to learn more about that.
Yeah, I'd love that example, Amy. And I'd like to just call out the Northern Forest Center on their amazing Bike Borderlands program, right? That goes across our 4 states and into Canada. And dang, do we need those relationships now, right? So thanks to the Northern Forest Center for all your support with that program.
I would also say along with that to check out the Cooley Jericho Community Forest. Not fully regional, but it is a really cool conservation project across 4 towns. And that's a pretty cool structure if you wanted to look into that project.
All right. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate this conversation. Caleigh, the work that you've done this summer, Janel for sharing what's going on in New Hampshire, and to my esteemed Northern Forest Center colleagues for sharing your input into these great projects in the community, and to the folks that participated and asked questions. Please know that we're always a resource. You can look us up online at northernforest.org. Shoot us emails, ask us questions. We're happy to be a resource and try to connect you with other resources to help you in your work in advancing rural economies. So again, thank you for joining us today for this presentation. We will send follow-up materials by email with the webinar recording. Please take our evaluation survey to give feedback on this webinar. There's going to be a bunch of links here in the chat. Special thank you to our colleague Isabella Ronson, who's behind the scenes right now doing all of this fun tech work for us. Also in the chat is a link to sign up for our news digest, which is a bi-weekly email with news from around the region. And keep an eye out for our next webinar for a conversation with nonprofit organizations raising and deploying investment capital in our region. Mission-aligned investors can bring funds to community projects that may otherwise lack the capital they need to get started. And you can learn more about different impact fund models and how these investments can make a difference in your community. Details will be available in the coming weeks in our news digest, social media, and our website. Finally, if you like this webinar and you want to support our work, please consider donating to the center. Thank you again, Caleigh, Janel, and my center colleagues for sharing your insights with us today. And thanks for being here. Have an awesome day. Thank you so much.